Okay, so let's get into cos and tan. So I'm not going to go through the whole graph thing with you with cos and tan, because really that's just me convincing you that you need to restrict the domain. So the cos graph, we're actually going to restrict between 0 and pi. And so you need to know that inverse cos of x equals y is equivalent to saying that cos of y equals x. Okay, and then if we try a question, so inverse cos of -1 over root 2 is the same thing as saying cos of y equals -1 over root 2. Okay, so do my cast rule. I'm only working between 0 and pi, and I'm looking for where cos is negative. So I'm going to be in this quadrant. Cos is x over r. Okay, so I know that this triangle right here is a pi over 4 triangle. However, I am looking for the size of this angle. Well, I know that this is pi, so that's the same thing as 4 pi over 4, so this bit is 3 pi over 4. So y equals 3 pi over 4, okay? And then let's look at a more fun example of when we're putting an inverse inside the function. So inverse cos of 7 pi over 6. Now, if you guys remember from my previous video, I talked about a function inside the inverse, and maybe some of you are tempted to write, it's 7 pi over 6. Hopefully, you realize that is incorrect because 7 pi over 6 is not within this restricted domain. So let's actually do this question. So what is cos of 7 pi over 6? So 7 pi over 6 is going to be here because this whole piece here is 6 pi over 6. So this is another pi over 6, which is equivalent to 30 degrees. So this is root 3 to 1, negative, negative. Okay, so cos of 7 pi over 6 is the same thing as saying minus root 3 over 2. So those are equivalent expressions. So then I'm going to rewrite that. So cos of y equals minus root 3 over 2. Let's draw it. So remember that I only exist between 0 and pi. I'm looking for where cos is negative, so I'm actually here. So cos is root 3, 2. So this is a 30-degree triangle, so it's pi over 6. So I'm looking for this answer here. So if this whole thing is 6 pi over 6, and this bit's pi over 6, then this bit right here is 5 pi over 6. So that's just kind of a warning that when you're doing a function inside its inverse, you can't just conclude that it equals this angle unless this angle is within the restricted domain. Okay, so that's cos.